Hey guys, so for this video, I'm making an updated keybinds guide for Chapter 2 Season 2. The last time I made a video dedicated to only keybinds was around 4 months ago, and that was just a simple discussion video. For this one, I'm basically going to cover all the questions I repeatedly get asked and talk about all the best keybinds for each different action or feature in the game. On top of that, I'll talk about why optimal binds are still important, as well as which pros have recently switched to better settings themselves. Before we start though, I'll quickly throw up some timestamps in case you want to skip around. You guys know I always recommend watching the whole thing through, that way you can come to your own conclusions on the topic, but feel free to do as you please. So on that note, let's start with my optimal keybind philosophy. Now, by philosophy, all I mean are what rules I try to follow when selecting keybinds. Many of you guys have probably heard these already, but for those of you that have not or forgot, there's 4 important guidelines you should follow when selecting binds. First is that you want to put as many of them as you can onto your pinky and 2 thumbs. This is because any build binds you have on your index or ring finger will force you to move that specific finger off of your movement key in order to hit it. In turn, this means you do not have full control of your movement while placing that build piece, which is something you don't want. After that, the second keybind recommendation is that you want to put any of the remaining builds you don't have on your pinky or thumbs as close to WASD as you can. That way, even though you will be using your index or ring finger to build, those fingers won't be forced to move that far away from A or S. Second to last keybind recommendation is to try and spread your binds out to as many different fingers as you can. I suggest a maximum of 2 major actions per finger, where a major action includes building, editing, jumping, and crouching. Some good examples are your wall and ramp on your mouse side buttons, which are both hit by your right thumb, or your floor and edit key on something like F and E, because they're both hit by your index finger, or even cone and crouch on left control and left shift, since they're both on your pinky. All of the examples I just said pass the 2 action per finger maximum and are Papagerian approved. However, the key word there is maximum. If you can get it down to 1 major action per finger while also following the 2 other guidelines, then you've literally found the best keybinds in the game. But if you can't, like most people, you could still follow my tips to get a pretty decent set of binds. And speaking of good binds, the final and most important rule is using what's comfortable to you. No matter how optimal the binds you theory craft are, they will not work out if they're not comfortable for yourself. Have you noticed how I have decently optimal keybinds but not the most optimal like I'll show later? That's simply because I'm not comfortable in changing them. Swapping around my crouch key or anything like that would hurt my finger, and I'm not going to force myself to play in pain just for the sake of optimal keybinds. So above all else, find what's comfortable to you. Alright, moving on, I'm going to talk about specific keybinds I recommend for each major action I just mentioned, as well as specific keybinds I think you should avoid. Starting with your wall, I highly suggest putting it on your mouse side button. I know some of you guys might find it awkward at first, but trust me, being able to strafe right and left while taking walls is one of the most helpful things ever while box fighting. I always had my wall on Q, and while it wasn't completely terrible, it definitely held me back in terms of box fighting and feeling comfortable in close range engagements. Oh, and before I forget, the other reason I suggest you use your mouse button is that you have to pull your wall out a lot, which is not good if your finger is not hovering over it or you have a weak pinky. Still, if you have a strong pinky or you prefer using your thumb, they are just as good as a mouse button, as you can see from my tier list. Even binds in the second tier like F could be in the first one if you tilt your keyboard like clicks and hit F with your thumb. All it comes down to is what you're most comfortable using. Next up, your floor. I recommend using C or V and hitting that with your thumb. This sounds a lot easier than it actually is, hence why I don't use it. Most people that do, I believe, tilt their keyboard like 15 to 20 degrees vertically. This way they can rest their palm on the spacebar to jump, and then their thumb on the bottom row of their keyboard to hit C and V. Don't worry if you're not comfortable with that, because there's a ton of other options as you can see here. Most of them, as you'll notice, are the same ones I said to use for your wall, and that should make sense because they're all close to WASD or completely off of your index and ring finger. Following that up is your ramp, which I recommend you put on your other mouse side button. That means you'll have wall on one and ramp on the other. The reason I recommend putting your ramp on it and not your floor is that you'll use your ramp more often, and it's also more important for box fights and build battles. So if you only have a few options for builds that you can put on your thumbs or pinky, pinky, make sure you prioritize your wall and ramp first. Some other decent options are things like E and Q that you've seen twice already for the other build pieces. You just want something close to WASD, or preferably off your index and ring finger. Lastly, for your cone, turn sprint by default on and put it on left shift. Most people, including me, have really weak pinkies and can't spam it as much as we can like the rest of our fingers. With a cone, however, you're never really spamming it, and you can always quickly whip it out without losing control of your movement, since your pinky should be hovered over it at all times. Potential backup binds are the same ones I've showed like 3 times already, but if you can, do your best to put your cone on left shift. Onto one of the most highly debated binds, and that is your edit key. In my own opinion, the 2 best edit binds are E and F. Both of these keybinds are extremely close to WASD and are hit by your index finger.
But Charian, didn't you say you want major actions off your index and ring fingers?
Yes, I did. The one thing that does not apply to though is editing. You need to be able to spam your edit key to edit fast. I don't care how fast you can spam your pinky, your thumb, or your ring finger, your index finger will always be faster. However, that does not mean G is a good edit bind. F is quite literally right next to it and closer to WASD. Even Booga, who hasn't changed any binds in years, recently switched from G to F for editing. And as far as F versus E goes, I really don't think it makes that big of a difference. I know Mongrel switched from F to E a few weeks ago, mainly to help him do Mongrel classics, but it mainly depends on how you position your keyboard and what you find more comfortable. So again, E or F are tier 1, tier 2 are other common binds that do not include mouse buttons because that can mess up your aim, and tier 3 are ones that you really should not use, but you might if you have no other options. One major action in Fortnite people tend to forget about is your crouch. I pretty much only recommend left shift or left control to crouch unless you play with a vertical keyboard and use C with your thumb. Why? Well, crouching is an extremely important and overlooked keybind that you need to have off of any of your movement key fingers. Way too many people use C and hit it with their index finger, then complain that they can't strafe right while crouching. Believe me when I say, you always want to be able to move left and right while crouching and uncrouching. If you can't, that's a huge problem. Have you ever wondered how Mongrel wins so many 50-50 bloom fights? A huge part of it is him crouch and strafe spamming to make himself a harder target. And the way he does it is by hitting left control to crouch, space to uncrouch, and at the same time hitting A and D to move side to side. That is something you simply cannot do if you use C or X to crouch and hit it with your index finger. So if you can't do that with your current crouch bind, you really need to get a new one. The final and probably the least important of the major binds to choose are your weapon key binds. By the way, I'm gonna include pickaxe as one of them, even though it's not technically a weapon. Regardless, the safest and most popular weapon binds you'll find are number keys. This is because you should be swapping your weapons before the fight or during it while jumping, so it doesn't matter that they're kind of far away from WASD. With that being said, it's important to keep in mind 2 things. One is that if you have a leftover keybind like Q or something else that's easy to hit, definitely use that over a number key. Vice versa, if you have Q as your pickaxe but you use X for your floors, then consider swapping them for more optimality. The other thing to think about is what finger you hit your shotgun with. Your shotgun bind is by far the most common weapon key you will hit, especially in box fights. That means if you have 2 building binds and your edit key on your index finger, you would have to press 3 different keys with your one finger to do a simple Mongrel classic. Now add your shotgun to that, which you also hit with your index finger, and you're adding another button to press into the mix, which will only make you slower and more uncomfortable during box fights. So while I did say weapon binds don't matter too much, try to be aware of which keybind you're assigning to your shotgun, as it's by far the most important weapon bind you have. To wrap up the video, I'm really quickly going to show what the exact set of keybinds I recommend to everyone switching to keyboard and mouse. These are basically the tier 1 binds I just talked about, but I know some of you guys are going to ask for the best keybinds possible in order, so here they are. Front mouse button for wall, C for floor with thumb, back mouse button for ramp, and left shift for cone. Edit on E, scroll wheel down for reset, left control to crouch, scroll wheel up for interact, F for pickaxe, Q for shotgun, and then 2, 3, 4 for the rest of your weapon binds. The rest of your keybinds that I didn't go in depth into are honestly irrelevant and don't matter too much. I just put whatever I use or what I've seen different pros use for their maps, inventory, and other stuff like that. So if you're looking for the most optimal keybinds possible, either because you're switching to keyboard and mouse or you're sick of your current binds, this is them, and I don't see them changing anytime soon. Overall guys, that is everything everything you need to know about optimal keybinds in Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 2. Let me know your current keybinds down below, and maybe I or someone else can tell you what they think of them. I know a lot of you guys love to talk about keybinds, so make my comment section the place to do it. On top of that, if you enjoyed the video, then do be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and to turn on my post notifications. Shout out to everyone using code Jerian. I hope you guys are all staying safe and doing well with all the coronavirus stuff. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later.